What's the name of this cruise ship?
Celebrity.
Celebrity Mercury. And it's 2004, and we're in July, and we're almost to Juneau, Alaska, but we're taping Mom to find out what amazing wisdom she can impart to Abigail. And we're giving this video to Abigail probably around when she's 22 years old, so that she can see what kind of wisdom her grandmother had in 2004. She may not be as smart, whenever Abby's 22. Anyway, so let's go ahead and ask some questions for you. The first thing for Mom is, how old were you when you entered the real world?
21.
You were 21. And tell us what was happening at that time when you were 21, how you entered the real world.
Well, I had just finished 1 year of college, and my daddy had put me through college by selling a lot for me to go to college. Then the next year I had to make a decision, and I decided to get a job.
Why'd you decide to get a job?
Because I didn't want him to have to suffer anymore scraping up money for my college.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a job at Amoco Refinery, which was a very good job at that time.
And this was in Texas City, Texas, right?
In Texas City, and this was 1956,
Mm-hmm.
48 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
This is the year in which I got married also.
Oh, so did you quit to get married?
No, I didn't quit to get married, but I quit because of the reason I said before. But I did get a job, and then we had a very nice wedding,
Mm-hmm.
and I was still working at Amoco, and then all of a sudden, I was married, and I had no husband. He was gone to Officer Candidate School
In Virginia, right?
in Quantico, Virginia,
Mm-hmm. In the Marines. Mm-hmm.
in the Marines. And I was living with my mom and dad, and I was still working at Amoco. And this was a happy time for me because I was asked to be in beauty contest at Amoco and a beauty contest at Texas City. Of course, I didn't win any of them.
But weren't you the Miss Swimsuit?
No, I didn't win Miss Swim Time. I think I came
Miss
in.
Swim Time.
That's what it was. I think it was second or third.
Uh-huh.
And I was having a good life.
And your husband deserted you to
And
go
he
become an
left.
officer in the Marines
Right.
to make more money, right? Is that why you joined the Marines? I mean,
Yes.
is that why you
And
became
he
an
loved
officer?
the Marines too.
Uh-huh.
I mean, once a Marine, always a Marine. But wives couldn't go to OCS
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So that was 1956, as I say. And I did have 1 year of college, and I later got another year of college after I got married, which I think that's important, if you can go to college.
And, okay, so 1956, roughly. In general, how do you think the world was different for somebody 21, 22 years old back in the 1950s versus right now?
Well, right now there's a lot of scary things around, like terrorism and dope, and there's so many people around that you get some bad people coming around sometimes. And 48 years ago, there were fewer people and nobody worried too much about dope or terrorism.
Didn't they worry about the Cold War, like nuclear bombs?
People felt kind of safe after the Korean War, which was in 1951 and 2.
Uh-huh.
4 years later, people were feeling good about America, and people were prosperous, and it was just different from now. because of the security, for one thing.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, if you can think back to that time, what are your fondest memories during that time, besides getting married?
My fondest memories. It was just my daddy was building a new house, and he was so happy to be building a new house.
Is that in Texas City?
This was in Texas City.
That's the one that later got flooded by Carla, right? Hurricane
Right.
Carla?
This
Mhm.
was 56, and 61 it got 48 inches, I think, of water up
Uh-huh.
the wall. But they remodeled it and fixed it right back up.
Mhm. So you remember your daddy building your house at that time?
Yes, and also he started his company at that time.
Uh-huh.
And I had a good job, and I was giving him money every month to keep his company going and getting it started.
Uh-huh.
And this company later became $1 million company.
Yeah.
And a happy thing that my daddy did was I discovered a letter recently in which he said, "Thank you to our lovely daughter Mary for being so good to me and helping me get my company started."
Wow. That's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big transformation from Granddaddy from that time when they had no money and he was looking for jobs,
All the time.
and then he was a millionaire, 30 years later, and it was all hard work. Because I saw how they worked. I worked there for a summer, and it's grueling, amazingly hard work. So you remember that. What other fond memories do you have of that time? What can you think of? What do you picture in your brain?
Well, later on, when my husband became an officer, that was good
Mm-hmm.
because I quit my job at Amoco, which I went back to 30 years later, and then eventually retired from Amoco.
Mm-hmm.
But I quit my job. We went to Quantico, Virginia, and had a little apartment, and stayed there a few months, and then we took our first trip across the United States. We went to Alabama, and I was pregnant with Lucy
Mm-hmm.
by that time. And we went to Alabama, and my Aunt May had baby clothes that she gave me because she had always wanted to have a baby, and she never had one. And my grandmother was so proud I was pregnant and going to have a baby. And then we went to Texas and visited Mother and Daddy. And this was Christmas, and it was a nice Christmas when we visited them
Mm-hmm.
before we went to California. Then we went to California, and we had Lucy at the U.S. Naval Hospital at Camp Pendleton, and then Bubba at the U.S. Naval Hospital, Camp Pendleton, 19 months later. And then we went back to Camp Virginia and took another trip across the country. And then we went back to Camp Pendleton, and Gordon was born in the U.S. Naval Hospital in Oceanside, California.
And that was 8 years after Lucy was born.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And those were happy memories.
Mm-hmm. Well, before you got married, who was the most important person to you, you think, in your life at that time, before you met Pop? Who can you think of the most important person to you at that time?
Just my family, I guess.
Family?
had
Which of your family?
Betty was a good friend to
Mhm.
me. And Odette was too, all right.
These are both your sisters, and they were a couple of years younger than you?
Yeah, and then I had Don and Wendell, who were even younger than Betty and Odette.
Mm-hmm. Why was Betty the most important to you, you think, at that time?
She was always my favorite sister. And of course, when she was 52 years old, she died with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm. And why was she the most important to you? Why was she your favorite?
Because I could tell her anything. She could tell me anything.
Mm-hmm.
We have secrets that if somebody knew them, they would be aghast.
We'll go into that in the next tape. So now you're 48 years older than you were when you got married. You and Pop had your anniversary last week, July 14th. And looking back to yourself 48 years ago, what would you have done differently at that time? What mistakes would you not have made, or what things would you have done to make your life better, or, to improve things in general? Can you think of anything?
I don't know. I probably should have waited later to get married. Maybe a little.
Mm-hmm.
Been single and built up a career a little more.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure, about
Yeah.
that.
Why do you think you should have waited later? You were how old when you got married?
21.
21. Uh-huh.
Going on 12.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And you had lived most of your life in Alabama, your childhood in Alabama.
Until I was 12.
Okay, and then so you were a teenager in Texas City, Texas. Then you went to Huntsville, Texas, to Sam Houston State Teachers College, it was called at the time.
Right.
Which is now Sam Houston State, I believe. And so that's all you had done up until the age of 21, right?
Right.
Well, we're making this video because we want to force advice on Abby. Not really. We want to hear from Lucy and Bubba, my brother and sister, and Pop about
Abigail?
what
Can
they
I
were doing.
Talk to Abigail?
Yeah, why don't you give her some advice?
Abigail?
She's listening to this and she's 22 years old.
You're my little Valentine. You're my little sweetie pie. Do you remember all that we used to talk about on the phone? And every time I would see you, you would run, jump in my arms. And those were happy times, too.
And they are today. Did she do that today?
Mm-hmm. She did that today.
Yeah. Well, what do you think Abby is like today? What's your picture of Abby? Because you've had other granddaughters. You've had 3 other granddaughters. You've had children. You've had nieces and nephews. What's Abby like, and how is she different from other kids? Or how is she the same? What's she like?
Abby is very strong-willed and intelligent and very athletic.
Mm-hmm.
She will be successful someday in her own way and in her own time.
Mm-hmm.
And she will be a beautiful girl, and all the men will be chasing after her.
Mm-hmm. There's one little boy on this cruise who's chasing after her.
Yes,
Or she's chasing after him, one or the other.
She already has John Patrick?
John Patrick Clark.
John Patrick Clark is chasing Abby at age 6.
Well, why don't you give a message to Abby? Something you'd like to say to Abby when she's 22 years old. What do you want to say to Abby? Play like she's here and tell her. Just tell her something.
Abby, I don't know what to tell you. You need to tell me.
She's sitting in front of her TV set. She's 22 years old. She's listening to this. It's probably on a DVD, or maybe on some new technology, because that's over 15 years from now. So she's sitting there. What do you have to say to Abby?
Well, I just hope that I'm around, Abby, to see you graduate from high school and college, and to find a very good husband and a very good career. I want you to have everything. Good husband, good career, and children. And hold them in your lap until they're 2 years old. And love them. And everything else will be okay.
Thank you, Miss Johnson, for being with us today.